If you just got a PlayStation 5, then congratulations. I hope you really enjoy it. I think you're in for a treat, but more so you've come to the right place because this is going to be a proper PS5 starter guide, everything a new owner should know, be aware of in setting up your PS5, the stand, storage options, transferring content, tips and tricks for the UI, some really important stuff to set up. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's begin with explaining the PS5 stand situation. I know some are getting a little confused by this thing, and there's a reason why your PS5 came with it and why it's one of the first things you take out of the box. You should really be using it. In a vertical orientation, PS5 is tall and top-heavy. It will easily slide around surfaces or it can get knocked over by accident. The stand keeps it planted to avoid any mistakes like that. In a horizontal orientation, PS5 wouldn't sit flush. It would awkwardly sit with weight distribution hitting the corners, being uneven. The stand allows it to sit elevated and level. So when holding the stand, you can rotate those rear hooks from left to right. Those are the two different positions. For vertical, you slide it to align with the impression in the middle, and on the bottom you'll find a little secret door that reveals a screw. Underneath your PS5, you can remove a small plastic cap and pop this into the bottom of the stand for storage. Then use the supplied screw to thread it into the stand and PS5, and after that you're all set. For horizontal, rotate the hooks into the other position, and look at the back of your PS5. On the bottom white panel, you'll see a collection of large PlayStation buttons. This indicates where you want to center those rear hooks. You attach it that way, and then you're done. Now, yes, PlayStation 5, for all intents and purposes, is thick. It's really big, so yes, be mindful of where you place it. If it's a tight squeeze in a TV stand or cabinet, try to find a different spot for it. You'll want, at a minimum, a space where there's room for heat to exhaust out of the rear. This console does have a great cooling solution this time around versus PS4, so it will be much quieter, but if it can be helped, give it room to breathe to avoid any excessive wear. When it comes to starting up your PS5, you can begin the process of transferring over your PS4 games and saves, and there's a few different ways to approach that. You could simply reinstall them separately and utilize PS Plus Cloud saves, or transfer them over Wi-Fi with both the PS4 and PS5 plugged in. Or you can transfer them over via an Ethernet cable connected between the two. The transfer speed will be a lot faster this way. Or if you've been using an external drive on PS4, that will pretty much be plug and play on PS5, and you can continue playing PS4 games right off of that. Speaking of which, here's a really good tip. Right now, your PS5 out of the box comes with roughly 667 gigabytes of SSD storage. PS5 games have to be saved and played from there. So if you've got a lot of PS4 games too, it's worth it to invest in an external drive if you don't have one already. Use that purely for PS4 games so you can save space on your SSD, especially because external HDDs or even external SSDs, the price per gigabyte is really affordable in that situation, so you can easily grab a 1 or 2 terabyte drive without spending too much. And here's a few other things to note. If you care about hiding unsightly cords and drives, you can utilize one of the rear USBs to hide it. And also in the PS5's storage settings, you can set it so that anytime you install a PS4 game, it goes right to your external drive first. And finally, another benefit to the external drive is that if you do still say have too many PS5 games, you can transfer them to the external drive as cold storage, meaning that you can't play them, but it will be a lot faster to move them over there, keep them there for storage, and then move them back to the internal drive to play, than say deleting the game entirely and reinstalling it or downloading it all over again. Another thing to keep in mind with storage is that some games can be trimmed down a bit. It's notoriously well known at this point that Call of Duty is a huge storage hog, but you can hit options on it and select Manage Game Content. This is where you can delete certain modes that you no longer play or need anytime soon to save space, and this works for a few games that allow you to trim them down like this. You can also see that if you need it, there's the option to download additional languages as well. Finally, let's say you've done everything and you still want more storage for PS5 games that are ready to play. That's where you can buy a compatible M.2 SSD that you install in your PS5 directly. This is much easier than you think, but it's still a little more involved, so if you are unsure of how to approach this or want more info, I will link a very thorough guide in the description, but in short, you need a very fast M.2 SSD that will fit inside your PS5 with a heatsink. You install it in the expansion bay and format it for use from there. Next up, if you have a TV that can do 120Hz, then you need to make sure the HDMI cable you're using is HDMI 2.1 compliant, and thankfully your PS5 does come with one, so just as a precaution, don't use the existing cable that you have unless you know it's 2.1 compliant. Use the supplied cable and that way you'll be all set to play compatible games at 120 frames per second. Once you're set up and on the main menu, here's a few things that I would recommend. Head to settings and set your 3D audio profile. You can use any connected headphones and pick the sound profile that sounds the most real to you. You'll want to adjust this as needed for when you play any PS5 games that will utilize 3D audio. You'll also want to alter your sound settings so that by default, your microphone status is off when you log in. For some reason this setting is turned on by default, and even if you don't have a headset on, your DualSense controller has a microphone built in. Now, it works pretty well, but the last thing you'd want is to start playing online and not realize you've actually got a microphone on. Now, let's say you don't have or want to use headphones. Maybe you just use your standard TV speakers. That's fine too because there's a setting to enable 3D audio from your TV. You can set this option on in audio output settings, and when you do, make sure you measure the acoustics. What this will do is use your controller's microphone to measure the acoustics of your room, and it will adjust your 3D audio accordingly. One thing you'll start to get accustomed to is the control center. It comes up every time you hit the PlayStation button. This is like your PS4 quick menu, except on PS5, it's a single press instead of a long press. So if you want to go directly to the home screen, hold the PS button. And in case you missed this on the introduction screen, hit the options button to rearrange the icons to your liking. Okay, so one of the coolest things going into PlayStation 5 is that a lot of developers are offering free upgrades to your existing PS4 games, so you might already have enhanced PS5 games waiting for you. To see what you might have, you could head to your game library and make sure you're looking at the Collection tab. This will show you everything associated with your PSN ID, games you've installed or have installed before, PS Plus games, digital soundtracks, etc. If you notice a game says towards the bottom that there's 2 or more items on it, then that means there's multiple versions you're entitled to, which sometimes it's a free PS5 version. In other cases, the publisher might be charging a small fee to upgrade, but that's what the icon will mean. I'll provide a link in the description too for a great guide on Push Square that shows a full list of all the free upgrades that are already out there. Also worth noting here, but over time this will work in reverse. A lot of digital games on PSN may sometimes grant you the PS4 version as well, so if you ever want to, you can also head to your game library and manually download the PS4 version that you're entitled to in addition to the PS5 game that you may have already bought. Speaking of entitlement, if you're a PS Plus member, one of the very first things you should get done is head to the PS Plus menu and check out the PS Plus collection. This benefit is only for PS5 owners, and it includes 20 fantastic PS4 games ready to download and play for as long as you're a member. You don't even necessarily have to download all of them, just go to each one individually and add it to your library. That way it's always associated with your account, and you can re-download them whenever, wherever, for as long as you're a Plus member. Okay, now let's go over what I would consider probably some of the most useful and helpful tips and tricks that you should know. Like first off, on PS5, there's finally a wish list on the PlayStation Store, so whenever you're surfing the store, you can finally wishlist games you're interested in and keep a full running list. And when you do this, make sure you head to your notifications and toggle wishlist updates. Then you'll be notified when a game you're watching goes on sale. When you're on the home screen, instead of scrolling up and around the media tab to get to the search icon or your profile, just hit triangle. You can see triangle acts as a shortcut to jump into the top right corner. This works when you're in the PlayStation Store too. When you're in a party and you need to quickly access the chat settings, instead of bringing up the control center and manually scrolling over to GameBase, just double tap the PS button. It will bring up the voice chat card on its own right away, and you can do what you need to do from there. Head to your settings, save data in game app settings, and set your game presets. Nowadays, most titles offer a lot of options when it comes to inverting your camera view, subtitles, performance modes, or even the difficulty. You can set your preferences so that sometimes when you start a game, these options will already be selected to how you like it. It won't always work 100% for every game, but worth setting these right away so that when it works, it works. In the same menu, I also highly recommend you scroll down to spoiler warnings and adjust these if you play a lot of single-player, narrative-heavy stuff. PS5 can warn you of potential spoilers if your friends send you revealing screenshots. Under the capture and broadcast settings, you can head to auto captures and adjust these if you want to save even more space. PS5 will automatically take screenshots and videos of your trophy progress. These don't take up a whole lot of space, but it's still slightly extra bloat and it will generate a lot of separate files, so if you leave it to capture videos of all your trophies, you can instead set it to just golds and platinums, just platinum, or nothing at all. If you have a PSVR headset, you can continue using that on your PS5, but there's a big caveat here. You need an adapter to use your PS4 camera, which it's completely free to get. You just have to head to Sony's website, I'll link this down below, and you have to submit the serial number of your headset. From there, you can request where you'd like your adapter sent, and Sony should get one sent out to you in 1 or 2 weeks. Kind of a pain, but at least you can continue using PSVR on PS5. One great thing about this console is that you can really stay on top of maintaining it because the side panels can be easily taken off. The first time you do this, it might take a little extra pressure, but have the console facing away from you upside down. Lift the bottom right fin a little bit upward and apply pressure to the left. Flip the console over gently. Same deal, lift from the corner, pressure, it comes off. If you notice a scratch or something, don't worry, this happens to a lot of people the first time. It's just a surface scratch that you won't see again anyway since it'll be covered, but from there you can easily wipe away any dust accumulation around the vents and fan. These are what I'd consider probably some of the more important tips to be aware of and settings to adjust, but otherwise there's a lot more, so if you would like a more thorough look into various PS5 tips, secrets, and features, those will also be linked in the description. Outside of these, some more personal recommendations on my part, I would say grab an extra colored controller. Now, I personally like the white, but over time, no matter how clean your hands are, it's going to stain, so try and mix your playtime with a colored DualSense. And if you do want to stay on top of cleaning the white one, go for isopropyl alcohol, 93% or higher, use a microfiber cloth and wipe away the grime. Don't do that too frequently, the alcohol is strong and excessive rubbing or use can damage it, but light cleaning is totally okay. I'd also say when it comes to accessories and outside of headsets, which for that you've got plenty of great options out there, whether you get Sony's or a third party, if there's one other accessory to get, grab the official charging station. It's the nicest one I've ever used when it comes to consoles. It's convenient, solid build quality, and it just looks good. It matches PS5 perfectly, instead of looking like an obvious third-party station, which, let's be honest, they tend to look cheap and tacky, so if you care about that sort of thing, the official one is great. When it comes to games, I'm not going to really insert too much opinion here, but I will say this. Don't sleep on Astro's Playroom. Every PS5 comes with this for free, pre-installed. Sometimes you have to download it, depends on your console, but it would be a disservice to not try it. It's a gorgeous, fun 3D platformer, and it introduces you to the DualSense controller's haptics and triggers in the best way possible. I'm sure it's tempting to ignore it and start playing your fancy new PS5 games, but don't let Astro be forgotten, especially if you're a longtime PlayStation fan. It's like playing through PlayStation history, and it's wonderful.